I thought we're going to be doing Google Apps and talk about Google Docs, spreadsheets, forms, and so forth. And so I just thought I would start with this demonstration of actually some of the things the kids did, because I couldn't do it in the last session because I ran out of time. And so this is the Viking magazine that I started in 2007, and it's being taught by the woman that you saw in the video, Ellen Austin. And part of the reason I was just going to show you this is that this is transferable to other teachers. It's not just me. So there are 5 other teachers at Palo Alto High School, and they're all doing this. And here's this is the Viking magazine, and the kids put it all online. So it's pretty impressive. They did this themselves. And this is what it looks like. And they do all the layout and design. So can you imagine what they're learning when they do this? They're learning, you know, layout, design, writing, photography, cooperation, coordination, all these skills. And so somebody asked me later on, well, do you test them? And it's like, why would I need to test them? You know, if they can do this, what kind of a test do I need to give them? And so this is just one. We have all those other magazines that you saw there. But by the way, just independently, without teaching to the test, they do score at the very top in the 99th percentile. And it's because they're intrinsically motivated to want to learn this stuff because it's published for everybody to see. They don't want to be, you know, embarrassed in any way. Works out pretty well. So then I have another one that I'll show you here. So this is the Campanile. And this is the Campanile. They have a website that they put up themselves. And here is the newspaper that they publish. This is the last edition of the year. And it's the same, it's a full-size newspaper. It's the size of, it's called a broadsheet, size of the New York Times. And the first section is 14 pages, second section is 14 pages. And so, and also there's one other thing that I didn't mention, and that is it's completely self-supporting. So I teach them basically how to create ads, as you see on the left side there. You can see the ad flex. And the reason is because I want them to understand how the whole system works. And this year they're going to be using Twitter, and they're going to be tweeting for the businesses that place ads. And the purpose of that is so they learn how to use Twitter and like what's useful about it. And everything is that we don't add any money to the school budget because all they're paying for is a teacher, me. But then they're not paying for the publication. This publication costs about $30,000 a year to publish, and they raise all the money through advertising. And every single one of these publications raises its own money. So they learn a lot about that as well. And we almost ran out of money last year. And so we had to have a meeting. We have a business manager, you know, an ad manager and all that. And they had, you should have seen that. I should have taped that session. Boy, were they worried. And they were trying to figure out, you know, how to make money and who they should go out and solicit for ads and the whole thing. And it's like, should we sell cookies? And I said, well, no, you guys are, did you ever hear of a newspaper that sold cookies? It's like, this is not, anyway, so they found, they succeeded. Anyway, so we're continuing here with, let's see if I can get it to go to the next page. Yeah, so this is the beginning of the second section, lifestyles. And again, they do their own design. And at the end of the whole process, they have what's called a WAJ check. So they abbreviated my name to WAJ. And that's what they call me, by the way. And so I go through and I look for anything that might be like, they obviously misspelled headline of some kind, something really, or anything that might be problematic. But for the most part, I never find anything because they've done a great job. This is a map they create, the class of 2011, where every single student in the entire class went to college. And it's an alphabetical list, and then it's geographical as well. And here's some more pages of the paper. And that's the last page of that section. So I just wanted you to know how this was all put together, and everything is put on Google Docs. And the reason I do that is because then they can edit each other's stuff at midnight. You know, that's when they're up, in case you wanted to know, really. And I come to class and they've edited all their stuff, and I just look it over briefly. I don't actually have to do too much because they're all really motivated. They own this publication. They're really proud of what they're doing, and you know, they know that they're in charge. So Julia is going to show you how to use some of these products. They're terrific. And the spreadsheet, by the way, they keep track of who turns in what and what time it's on and grades, and it's everything. It's great. Okay, thanks, Julia.
Okay, hi, my name is Julia Stiglitz, and I'm a business development manager on the Google Apps for Education team. Our titles here at Google really don't mean anything. You actually can make up your own title. I saw one the other day that was like Mad Scientist. That's their official title in MoMA. So what I do, I work with K-12 schools and departments of education who are interested in going Google, and then more recently I've been working with higher education institutions. So this presentation, what we're going to be doing is looking at the different ways that you can use Google Apps in your instruction as a higher education instructor. And then I'm also going to tie it back to what it looks like in K-12 because you're training teachers, and you can see what it actually looks like. The reason why I'm so passionate about Google Apps and Google Docs is that they're really simple tools, so that the focus isn't actually on the technology, which is not what's important here. It's rather what students are learning. So that the technology becomes a backdrop and they become tools that you can actually use to enhance their learning. And there's really three things that I think it brings. One is efficiency, second is collaboration, and then finally engagement. This presentation you can take home with you. So this is a bit.ly link to the presentation. Copy it, make it your own. There's webinars attached to it if you want to go in more depth on any of the tools. So feel free to share this with others and use it how you see fit. Okay, so what are these tools? We have Gmail, Talk, Groups, Calendar, Docs, Sites, and there are some other tools in there too. And we're going to start with Google Docs, which is what I see as really the heart and soul of Google Apps. And the way that I think that it has the biggest impact is actually the simplest way that it could be used, which is just using a Google Doc to collaborate. So in the K-12 space, I'll show you. If we have this example, this is an example of a lesson plan on Sherlock Holmes. And the first thing that you'll notice is you can see that there's actually two other people already in the document. So you can imagine teachers who are writing their lesson plans on a Sunday night who want to work with each other, who want to collaborate, because that's so core to what they do. And yet it's difficult given how much time they have and given the confines of the school day, and they want to work together. So I can start typing the goal. So let's see. You know, well, varies by state, and then I can also see, oh, look, Jordan is writing to me. Hi there. Let's change the objective. And then we can work together on the objective. She starts changing the objective. And in this way, we're collaborating at the same time. Every time she types a letter, I can see it. It's real-time collaboration. And it allows teachers to do what they want to do and what they know is important, which is to collaborate, but what is very, very difficult to do given time constraints. So this is the most simple way, and I think of all of the ways that Google Apps can be used, the way that's probably the most powerful. This is another way. It's using it. You can upload any type of file into your doc folder, and then you could share that collection with your colleagues. So if you're working on a research project with colleagues at another university, you could upload all the files that you need that you're working on together, and then share it out with your colleagues. This is if you're giving students feedback. You could have them hand in their papers through a Google Doc as opposed to through actual paper. And then you can use the comment feature on Google Docs to write your comments and give your red pen a rest. And the nice thing is that they can see they don't have to wait. So they could continue to work on a draft and get your comments, and there isn't that lag time. In the K-12 space, this looks really interesting when we get to collaborative writing or having students work on writing assignments together. So this example here, it's an example of third graders writing. And we have two students. We have Molly and Aunt. And you can see a couple things. You can see that the teacher has commented along here. These students could have written it from 2 different locations. We don't know. But what I think is the most amazing feature, and what is the favorite feature of teachers and the least favorite feature of students. Actually, let me pull out this. I think it's this one. Let's see. Is something called a revision history. And so what it shows you is every time anyone ever touched this document and exactly the time that they touched it. So let's see what actually happened with this story by Molly and Aunt. Well, we see that Molly started the story and she wrote just some gibberish. That was what she wrote here on October 31st. And then she got really, really productive and wrote pretty much the entire story. And then Aunt came in here and wrote the name, and she changed the spelling of meow, and then Molly finished it up. So all of a sudden, the teacher has so much more insight into the entire writing process, where it's not just this final product, but you can actually see which students contributed to what and when they wrote it. So did they write it the night before, or did they actually spend 2 weeks working on it? And you could also look back, because maybe there are some gems in there that the student didn't see in previous drafts that the teacher could pull out. So this is a really nice feature. I think the other really neat feature about this and using it for writing is that all of a sudden it doesn't just have to be the teacher and the student, just this binary relationship between the teacher and the student who are working on the assignment. It can be with parents or with other students, and they can comment on it as well. And so you can have these very collaborative learning experiences that would be very difficult to have without technology. Okay, this is another one. So especially in larger lecture halls, you have students sign in. This is just having them go on to a Google spreadsheet and say that they're there. Yep. For the sign-in sheet, it's up to you. So I would say that it would be, the students would create the document and then share it with the teacher. Or you could, give them a template that they could work off of.
So can I just add something? Teacher, you can share it with a lot of people. So they share it actually have 6 editors-in-chief, so they share it with all of them, and with me too. And you can see there's 2 different ways of sharing. One is view, and the other is edit. And so if you don't want somebody to touch it, you put it on view. And if you want them, but the advantage of having more of this feedback is the thing gets better.
This is also, spreadsheets can also be used in K-12 if you're tracking homework. So instead of like the sticker charts that you often see on classroom walls, you could just have put up anonymous numbers for students and then have a tracker for homework, and parents can come in and see what their students have completed. Oh, and this is actually an example of that in higher education. If you want students to be able to see their different grades, and you don't want them coming to you, what did I get on that last quiz, or did you get my last homework assignment, you could just post it, assign anonymous numbers, and students can have the information that they need about how they're doing in your class. This is a neat feature, and I think it's particularly neat because it exemplifies what's possible with the cloud. What this is it's dynamic spreadsheets, so you can import data from different places, and then the graphs will automatically update as the data changes. So in this instance, it's importing census data, and as the data changes, so will the spreadsheets. You could do the same thing with Google Finance. There's a finance lookup where you could import financial data, and as that changes, the graphs will also change. Motion charts, this is a really neat one as well, which I will show you. It allows you to analyze 5 different variables at the same time. So this was an experiment done in a K-12 classroom in which they'd used acid rain, and then they had normal rain, and they looked at the height of the plant and then how many leaves the plants had. And they wanted to analyze it, so what they did is they went to Google Spreadsheets, and they had the data, and then they inserted something called a gadget, and that gadget was the motion graph, and that allowed them to analyze it. So we look here, and we're going to look at the plant height across time, and we want different colors. And we also want to see what happens to the number of leaves for acid and normal rain. And then you can see what happens across time. The normal plant is getting taller and the number of leaves is increasing, and the acid rain plant is growing a little bit, but then it dies. So that's the end of it. But this can be used for all sorts of data sets. I had a friend that actually used it to analyze California API data, and there's all sorts of data sets that you can use this for in your academic presentations, and it tends to be it gets like it elicits that wow, yeah, the wow factor, which is nice. Okay. You can use this for project management. Some of these I'm going to just breeze through. And this is another one. This is using Google Presentations, which is our presentation tool. And if you have multiple people working on a presentation at the same time, instead of sending it back and forth, you can just have them work on the same presentation at the same time. OK. Before we go into this, I want to get a show of hands. How many of you have created a Google Doc before? OK, that's pretty good. How many of you have shared a Google Doc before? OK. How many of you have commented on what somebody else wrote? OK, so we're dealing with an advanced crowd here. I just want to make sure. And then have viewed revision history. OK, so it looks like most of you are already familiar with that. So I'm not going to actually have you go into this one. But there's some people who haven't, so maybe to do it. Yes, yes. Before you leave today, please make sure that you can create a document, share it with somebody, and commenting on it and use revision history. Those are really, I mean, if there's nothing else that you take away from this presentation, it's really that those basic things can really are powerful and they can improve instruction. And what is it? No dinner until yeah, no Google. Yes, exactly. Yeah. Yeah. Great. OK, so now we're going to get into Google Forms. And if you all can please go to this bit.ly link, if you have some sort of device, I have, and fill out this quiz. Oops, hold on just a second. OK. OK, so what we're seeing here is people are filling out a quiz, which they just went to. And then we're looking at the data. And as soon as you fill it out, the data is automatically uploaded onto the spreadsheet. It's instantaneous. And then it also has a timestamp, so you can see you can see exactly where it is. And we have a surprising amount of diversity in terms of the teams. I mean, the giants. Come on. OK. But this is the tool that ultimately it normally gets teachers hooked on Google Apps. There are just so many applications in the classroom of how this can be used. And I'll just go through a few quickly, but you're probably, even as you're filling this out, you're probably thinking of some of your own that we haven't thought of before. One is assessments. So especially in the very beginning of class, or if you want real-time data on what your students know or don't know, or what they're interested in and are not interested in, you can create a Google form and get that data. And then it's uploaded in a spreadsheet, so you don't have to do any of that annoying data entry. Beginning or end of the year surveys, again, just having that data kept in a spreadsheet is so much easier than trying to fill it out or trying to either have that stack of forms that students fill out or trying to upload it. You can use it instead of clickers. So many universities have clickers, but if the classroom isn't wired for them or if you don't have them, students have smartphones, and so you can just email them out a form and use it during class to poll what they're thinking, poll their answers, see what it is how they're involved, and get that sort of real-time data to modify your instruction. Pop quizzes, again, there's no data entry, it just makes your life easier. Using it for sign-up sheets. And I've attached 2 webinars here in case you want to go into more depth into forms and exactly how to create them and make them. But it's very easy to do, and it's a time saver. We use them for everything here. We use them for when we do events. We have people sign up through Google Forms. It's really nice. Okay, calendar. There's a couple of great features about calendar. I'll show you just a couple. Well, actually, in the interest of time, I'm going to keep going to this one. But one of the nice things is you can share calendars. So you could create a calendar for your class or for a teacher group that you're working with. And then you all have access to the calendar. You can see what events are when so that nobody misses any dates. And you can actually attach documents to that calendar so that everyone has access to those documents as well. This is a new feature that just rolled out about a month ago. You can sign up, you can create in your calendar appointment slots for office hours, and then students can sign up for office hours using those slots. So they don't have to email you back and forth about when they're going to come in. You can say, I'm going to be in the office at this time, and you use half-hour increments, and they can sign up. This is new. Yeah, it's still only about a month or two. Yeah. What is it? Yeah, it's in calendar. You can click if you want. There's something that you can click when you create an event, and if you want to make it an appointment, and then it'll ask you a couple different things, and then you can have people sign up for it. Yeah, and there's linked instructions here to set that up. Great. Okay, this is one that some people really like, being able to manage tasks and actions through Gmail, so as an organizational tool. And then no more email. Well, no, that's actually not true. But there are a couple ways that it can help make email a little bit easier, like using labels, using filters, and using power searches. So I'm not going to go into depth into those, but there are links here.
You misspelled task on another slide.
We'll be
Trying to help.
that's good. Okay, so talk. I actually want to show this one. This is one. If I go into the Gmail. So I'm looking here at my Gmail account. The first thing that I notice is I can see who else is online, which is just nice if you want to ask someone a quick question. You can just quickly ping them, like, what time is dinner? Oh, it looks like, so the chat is off the record, so How about 7 o'clock? Okay, so, but let's say we're having a really in-depth conversation and we can't communicate what we want to communicate via chat. I can do a Google video. There we are. Hi, Jordan. Hey, Julia. What time is dinner?
7.
Great. Thanks, Jordan.
No problem.
Okay, so less effective if you're in the same room. Very, very effective if you're on other sides of the country. One of my colleagues, the colleagues who's presenting a similar presentation in the other room, Jamie Cassup, he lives in Arizona. And we video chat at least once a day, normally multiple times a day. And it's amazing how that changes things, we work very, very closely together. And I don't think I would know him as well if I couldn't see his facial expressions or how he reacted to things. So being able to just have those video meetings this easily is a really great feature. It's also great if you want to have a guest lecturer come to your class, especially if you only want them to come for 10 minutes or 15 minutes. They can all they need is a Gmail account, and you can set this up on a projector, and they can speak to your class. Okay, Sites. Sites is a really great tool that a lot of people don't actually have that much experience with. What it is it's a website creation tool, but you don't need to know HTML. It's very easy to use, and you can embed all of your other Google tools in it. So your Google Docs, your Google Calendar, you can embed them all into your Google site. So this is an example of a course page that was created using a Google site. So you could have a course page where your students could go to find out what their homework is or find out where their syllabus is. And you can embed your calendar so that they can see when you have your appointment office hours. So this is one that's very popular in higher education. We're also seeing e-portfolios be used more and more. Clemson University, which is one of the universities that's on Google Apps, actually requires all of their students to maintain a digital e-portfolio, and they're all on Google Sites. So they create sites of their work with their resume and their examples of their student work, and then they're able to share them with other teachers, share them with their colleagues, share them with potential employers. And it's one of the trends that we're seeing right now in higher education, and that's starting to come into K-12 as well. Project sites, if you're working collaboratively with a group of other academics across the country, having a site to keep you guys organized can be useful. Another way to help you collaborate are groups. So groups, it's essentially, it's like a listserv, but it's a listserv on steroids is what one of my colleagues likes to call it. It allows you to create, it's a distribution list, but you can decide how often you get those emails, or if you never get emails and you just go to the groups page to see all of the events. And one of the nice things is, let's say you have somebody new added to your class or somebody new added to your group, they can just go to that page and see all of the previous correspondence, all of the previous messages that have been used in groups. This is another really popular one. And I want to just touch on a couple more. This is Google Moderator, which actually started out as an internal Google tool. So every Friday at Google, we have something called TGIF, where the founders in Charlie's, which I don't know if you went over to, Charlie's is the main cafe. It has even more food than whatever cafe you are eating in today. So lots of food in Charlie's. And every Friday, the founders come and they talk to the company about what's going on. And it's this really amazing thing that a company this large, that there's that level of transparency. And it's one of the things I think that makes Google really unique. But what they have is they have a moderator, which allows people to post their questions. And then the questions that resonates the most with people get voted up. And the questions that are not that interesting get voted down, so that the founders can actually answer the questions that people find most interesting. And this is something that we're starting to see used both in K-12 and higher education. So if you're in a big lecture hall and you want students to ask questions, maybe there's shyer students who aren't going to raise their hand, or maybe you just want the most interesting questions to come out, this tool can be used. In the K-12 classroom, how we've seen this be used is actually at the end of a lesson, the teachers ask the students to reflect on what they learned. So what did you learn in this class today? And then as a homework assignment, what the students have to do is go through everyone else's response and vote them up or down. So all of a sudden, the walls of the classroom have been extended, and students have to actually think critically about what other people wrote and whether or not it resonates with them and why. And classes, this was from a middle school class, and it's different classes that are actually collaborating. So this is a tool that we're just seeing starting to be used, but I think has really, really interesting implications. YouTube EDU, there's lots of lectures that are on there, and you could upload your own lectures there as well. And then finally, having some sort of class or personal blog is a way to engage students. And in actually one of my grad school classes, we had to, the end of every lecture, somebody was responsible for writing the blog entry that day. And then other people could comment on it, but the blog entry was about what they had learned in the class or their reflections of the class. And that did a couple things. One, it allowed people who weren't in our university to have access to some of the content that was being taught, which is great. And then second, it just allowed for this other layer of discussion that wouldn't have happened otherwise. This layer of discussion that was happening online, that was very structured, that was formalized and controlled, but it had an impact. We've also seen blogs being used in the K-12 space. James Sanders, who's also around, he's a teacher at one of the KIPP schools, and he had a one-to-one program in his classroom, and he used blogs to run his class, essentially. So the kids would come in, they would grab a laptop, and they would go to his blog homepage, and then they would have some sort of do now activity, which was linked in the blog. Actually, I'll show it to you. It's really neat. So this is his blog. It's on summer. It's summer now, so it looks a little bit different. But this is his blog. But most of the time, he'd have some sort of do now activity that was linked to the blog. And then he would have them hand in their homework through the blog or answer some question through the blog. And then they would close their laptops halfway. And you'd have a very traditional introduction to new material in which you would give a lecture. And then when it was time for their independent practice, again, they would go onto the computers and use a Google Doc or use a Google spreadsheet or whatever they needed given what he was trying to teach them. And so it was this really, I thought it was a really elegant way of integrating technology into his day-to-day routine in a way that made sense, and where the focus was on learning. It wasn't about the blog. Okay, so that brings me to the end, and I can answer questions, and then I'm also very interested in hearing your reflections on what things that we just talked about resonated with you that you think that you could bring incorporate into your instruction, and why. Yeah?
I have two questions about the Google the forms thing. So I fiddled around with them. I couldn't figure out if I could do it myself. So
Yeah.
I wanted to ask.
Yeah.
Two things I was sort of thinking about wanting to see in an educational context is
Yep.
one response per student and tracking if they've already logged in to Google, hey, I'm Eric Essler at google.gmail.com,
Yep.
attaching that to a response.
Yep.
Because otherwise, hey, who are you when you're answering this quiz is kind of hinky.
Yeah. So there's good things and there's some good things about that. So
There's good reasons to do that.
so there's if they're on a Google Apps account, if your school has Google Apps, you can say that that's required. So it'll do a stamp not just of the name, but or not just of the time, but it'll also stamp their name. But it has to be within a Google Apps domain, so your school needs to be on the domain. If they're using consumer Gmail, it won't. You can't have them do it. You could have them fill out the name, but yeah, you don't know.
For protecting consumer Gmail.
Yep. And then your first question was about tracking on Google Forms.
Well, it was more, can you just say one response per student? But if you're already tracking the name, you see the first response.
Yep. Yep. Yep.
I know there's been questions just about accessibility of some of the Google apps, and I was wondering if you could talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, so right now there's a big push towards making our products more accessible, and it's for back to school. So I think there's not that much that I can speak of right now, but it's something that I would stay tuned into in the next 3 weeks. And it's something we take extremely seriously, and that we want to do not just a Band-Aid fix, but something big. I mean, there's a challenge about making dynamic content accessible in general, making the web accessible in general. Most solutions out there have dealt with static content, so like something that lives on your computer. When you get onto the web, it becomes much more challenging, and that's the challenge that we want to solve. So it's not a Band-Aid solution, but really something that gets to the core of what the issue is.
I know our university won't turn on Google Apps until that's resolved, and so that's limiting for us as far as what we can actually.
Yeah, and back to school is when it's going to be rolling out. So stay tuned, and we'll be sure to keep you in the loop in terms of what announcements that we have at that time. But it is something that we take very, very seriously, and that is, I mean, our team is top of our minds, and something that we're talking about more than once a day. Yeah.
Some of the teachers that we work with in the K-12 environment say they have issues with things being blocked. Who can we direct those requests to? I mean, obviously the district IT related, but can we give the district IT people some contact at Google so that they can sort things out between the two of you?
Yeah.
Figure this out rather than our poor teachers that want to use these
Yep.
things and can't.
Yeah, so there's a couple different places where you could point them. One of the things that we launched, one of the things we found was actually other schools are much more, they, even more than listening to us, they rather listen to their neighborhood, the district down the street. So one of the things that we launched recently was K-12 regional groups, and we actually have them for higher ed too, but the K-12 ones launched recently. So that's one place to direct them where they can meet other districts that have already gone Google and that have dealt with the exact same issues that they're dealing with, and that are in their neighborhood, which are going to be more powerful than us in California. We do work with large districts. We have a pretty small team, so it's hard to talk to everybody. But we do, larger districts tend to have more complicated issues, and we will work directly with larger districts and help them deploy the actual technology.
There's also one other resource. There's an email alias called education-solutions@google.com. And that actually reaches a lot of folks on the education team, and we can help answer those everyday general questions there too.
Yeah, that's a terrific resource. They'll get a response from someone on the team pretty quickly.
They need to speak to someone at Google.
Yeah. Yep.
So the Google appointment thing.
Yep.
Slightly disappointed. You need to have a Google Mail account to.
Right.
Right.
That you need a Google Apps. Yes, you need a Google Apps domain.
Okay. For now.
For now,
Was it only works within a domain?
within a Google Apps
No,
domain.
you need a Google account to sign up for the appointment. So if your student doesn't have an account, they have to sign up for it.
Well, I may have students sign up anyway because they all share Google Docs.
Then you're set.
So speaking of which,
Yeah.
While we're still filling questions, is
Yep.
there any easy way to, so if I'm a teacher, I'd like to share a templated document with each one of my students individually? So it's like, here, this is, an essay question I'd like you to respond to, and I put the essay question in the thing, and I give it to, Bob and Joe,
Yep.
Susie and Alice and Bob, but they each get individual versions of it and get it back, without just sort of creating one and saving it, creating one and saving it and sharing it, or just sending them a plain text and say, please copy and paste this and then share back.
The way in which I've seen it normally done is make a copy. So you send it to them and it's locked, and then they make a copy of it, and you can have them follow some sort of naming conventions, is the way in which I've seen it done. I don't know, Esther, if you have any other thoughts on it.
Well, I use Google Groups, and I send stuff out on Google Groups all the time, and then if it's something like that, they copy, paste, and respond. So I don't know how many of you use Google Groups, but it's incredibly effective.
Yep.
Don't take this the wrong way. I love your tools.
Yeah. That's okay.
But the comment about making your student in your context, and you're not asking to make a student.
Yeah.
Are there any sort of ethical issues, or I also sit on the IRB board at the university I work at, and some of the stuff, you know, the notion that it's public enough, you know, what kind of issues do you guys run into with respect to that phenomenon?
Yeah. I mean, I think that there's a couple different questions there. I mean, in the K-12 space, one of them is just around teaching students how to be good digital citizens and what it means to share things publicly versus share them privately versus, and those sort of distinctions, which are something that that we really encourage teachers to teach and to have those discussions with. If they're on a Google Apps domain, there are settings that the administrator can employ that help them keep it more closed. So for instance, if it's in K-12, you could use this in higher ed too. You could make it so you can't email anyone outside of the domain or share a document to anyone outside of the domain. It's something called a walled garden. And you can do it so that faculty can email everyone in the world, but then students can only email each other. There's other things like you actually get to decide with Google Apps what you turn on or off. So maybe a district is not ready yet to give email to students, so they turn that off. But they want to use Google Docs, so they turn that on. So there's actually a lot of granular control in terms of what an administrator and what a teacher and what an individual can do in terms of what they share and don't share. And then from there, I think it's really up to the individual instructor or the individual teacher in terms of how they discuss it, how they discuss privacy and what should be shared and what shouldn't be shared. Yep.
One of my colleagues has switched to having her students do all their lesson plans on a Google site.
Mm-hmm.
She'll go in and comment on
Yeah.
it. Sometimes the students will choose to share their lessons with each other. But is there a way to make comments private to the owner
Huh.
and not Google anyone can use them?
Huh. That's interesting. I don't believe so. Jordan, do you have any insight into that? If there's any way to make comments private just to the owner and not to everyone that saw the document.
I don't think it's available yet. I know that they are working on a visibility setting that only lets people comment on a doc and not do anything else. But that's a good question. We could definitely ask the docs team.
Yeah, we can look into that. I don't think it's possible at this point, but it is a really interesting use case that we can look into. Yeah.
So I'm not a professor, I'm a news guy.
Okay.
We worry a lot about the tyranny of the majority.
Uh-huh.
So I was wondering about a couple of the voting things. The one where the students were supposed to write their reactions to the professors, to the class, and then they would be voted down. But what if there's, like, Galileo is in the class and he sees something different?
Uh-huh.
That was a good thing that everybody ought to take.
Yeah.
And, apply that to the gathering at Charlie's. What happens to the...
So I mean, this is just my personal response on it, but so my take would be that this tool would make a fascinating discussion on exactly that topic. So, why was it that those two questions got voted on to the top, whereas Galileo, who nobody appreciated, was, down at the bottom and didn't get voted up? So then...
Galileo was smoking pot.
But I think it stresses, these are tools for the teacher to use, and it's really the teacher is ultimately at the core of this, and these are just easily accessible tools that to help teachers out.
And do the founders sometimes take a question from the bottom at Charlie's?
I don't know, actually. No, Tom says no.
Thanks.
Any other questions? We didn't go into that.
It's very useful that we basically wrote a collaborative math book and didn't have to try to paste in Google equations.
Great. Yeah, I mean, that's one of the most amazing things about this is just so many of these ideas we took from actual teachers, actual professors that are using this, and there's so many more ideas that people come up with that we've never thought of.
It's a LaTeX editor, so it's not like Microsoft Word. It actually looks like professional journal quality.
That's very cool. Well, thank you all. And we'll be around for questions.